So what I know about you is that you channel the souls of incoming babies.
Yes,
Have I got that
correct.
bit right?
You
Yeah.
do.
Okay. Good, good, good.
Yeah.
And listening to you on another podcast I had, that you were a more kind of traditional medium before
Yes,
you spoke to the
correct.
spirits of dead people, and now you're speaking to the spirits of the
Yeah.
incoming crew,
Yes,
next gen.
exactly.
Oh,
That's it.
wow. Okay,
I
okay.
know.
Amazing, amazing. I guess, can we do two snapshots? So first would be the snapshot of you realizing that you can talk to the spirits of dead people, and then the
Yes,
snapshot of when that changed.
absolutely. Yes. Yes, because it's quite it's really quite, I mean, I wasn't able to connect the dots in the moment of sort of the transition of, supporting souls who had just transitioned from life and then supporting souls who were preparing to come into life. I wasn't able to kind of grasp the poetic nature of that all until not that long ago. So, but to go back a step, yeah, it was just, as a little bit of background context, was always a very sensitive child, very, picking up on all kinds of things that other people around me couldn't see. And quickly I learned, oh, okay, I'm going to dial that back a little bit, because it seems that the people around me maybe aren't able to see the things that I can see at this moment in time. And so I learned very quickly what to say and what not to say. And that is kind of still a practice, where I'll go into a party or a gathering and people are like, so are you feeling things of the, people in the room? And I think I had to learn so early on of how to kind of like turn it on, turn it off, what was appropriate to say in certain environments, what was not appropriate to say in certain environments. So I learned how to kind of work with that very, very early on. But, so when I was around 19, 20, I had all of my kind of abilities start rushing back up to be acknowledged again. They all started coming back online. I was having dreams of people's loved ones, just these sort of people that I had never seen, never met before. I didn't know who they were. They were really just kind of people who had just transitioned from life all over the world. So I would, be told I am the grandfather of somebody who just passed away, in Southern America or in Europe or in Australia or this sort of thing. And I wouldn't know how to connect the dots. I was like, how do I even go about getting this? Am I supposed to get a message to this person? Am I supposed to just kind of witness this soul's transition as they've just exited their life? So it was kind of confusing for me in the beginning of, okay, so there's definitely a line of communication that is open and that wants to be open. And what am I really supposed to do with that? And because of so much of my experiences in childhood, I did so much on my own. I was just kind of like figuring it out as I went. It was really important to me to go to somebody who was already practicing mediumship and sort of have them show me, okay, how do I work with this? How do I actually use what's here and use it to support people in a way that is, grounded and in integrity and in love and compassion and understanding. And so I found my first mentor who basically gave me kind of the mediumship crash course 101. Here's how you do it. Actually, technically, she found me. She was basically like, you need to be doing mediumship. And I was like, okay, I will start. I will start doing that. So anyway, so from there, it really started I was in like a very small little, what we called a development circle. It was just me and one other person. And we would just channel for each other over and over and over again. I would channel for this person and bring through the mentor's loved ones and then the other woman at the circle. And it was very small, but I think it was a really safe learning environment. It was just, I knew I was comfortable with the people who were there. And so it provided me just the safety and the ability to just practice and to kind of be like, okay, I'm feeling this. And how do I follow that thread? And how do I get more detail from this person? And how do I present the information to this person? And so on and so forth. So anyway, that was kind of the learning process. And then at a certain point, I felt comfortable enough to start offering readings to different friends and family. And then going up to, I did have some of the experiences at the beginning where I was in the coffee shop and I was, feeling the person's departed aunt and went up to that person and had a connection with them. So there was some of that at the beginning as well. And it was a really beautiful time in my practice. And I was just really, I think that the greatest takeaway that I have from that time is how how connected the energies of our loved ones, and also, we could say the same about the incoming souls, which we'll talk about further in a moment, just how invested and connected they are, even when they're non-physical, and all of the different things that we're up to and that we're doing, that we're interested in, and how willing they are to show up for us when we ask them to. It was so beautiful, all the different ways that and these energies would kind of show up for the people that they were no longer able to be physical with, and also in all the ways in which what I call the intelligence of spirit, where they would orchestrate something. The only opening that I had for a reading just so happened to be on that person's birthday, or their grandma's birthday, or the death anniversary, or this sort of thing. Just the intricacies of the intelligence of spirit was something I got to really see up close during that time, and it was really beautiful. And of course, I still am able to, but it was a really beautiful time. So anyway, so I did that for quite a number of years and enjoyed it thoroughly, and was just very happy to be doing that work. And then all of a sudden it started to change. This was about in 2018. I was working with people as I had been, and it was just a random, I think it was a Wednesday, actually, if I'm remembering correctly. And I was working with this woman, and she kind of was, interested in mediumship, but also was just sort of interested in support on her path in general, was what she came to me for. And it totally did not go that way. What ended up happening is the energy of the child that she had miscarried about a year prior to the time that I met with her came forward in this experience and started communicating. And for me, for somebody who still had a very mediumship type brain, I initially interpreted this young child as a child who had passed away in the family, whether it was connected to her or a family member or a friend. And it took us a while to figure out that, wait a second, technically this was a child that had passed away in the family, but this was a child that hadn't actually had a full life. They had just had their experience in utero. And that there was such a rich experience that this energy had during the short period of time that she was in utero, which was only 7 weeks. But there was so much richness and so much detail and so much confirmation and validation and love that this soul had for this client, this mother. It was so beautiful. And so I say that from that moment, that soul basically kind of snuck in and kind of almost not tricked me, but sort of tricked me in a way where I was like, oh, this is just mediumship and we're just going along and doing the same old thing. It kind of just all opened up from there. And then it was almost like that was the day that the floodgates opened. And from that point forward, almost all of my referrals were mothers, were people who were trying to conceive, were people who had just had miscarriages, were people who
hold on, you're just cutting out a little bit there.
Oh, okay.
I wonder if it'd be better if you didn't use headphones.
Do you want me to try without them?
Yeah, is that okay?
How's that?
Okay, now you're a little quiet, but if we can...
Let me put up my mic. How's that? Better?
Yeah, can you go even a little louder?
Yeah. There. Try that. Test. Oh, it's still a little low, isn't it? Hold on.
Yeah.
All right, test.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good.
That's okay?
Yeah. Let's see if I can just turn you up just a little bit more. All right, let's see. Let's see how this sounds to both of us. Is that good for you?
Yeah, that seems better. It's picking up my mic better now, I think.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, so the floodgates opened. So all of these babies,
they started
speaking to you.
They started finding their way. They were just relentless.
And so these were babies that wanted to be born, or telling the stories about why they weren't? I mean, was it all?
Yeah, great question.
Yeah.
It kind of varied. The second person, if we're following this in sort of a chronological order, after that first experience, the second person who came in was a woman who found herself pregnant very unexpectedly. This was something that she was not expecting, not planning for. Had already had one child and was interested in having more, but just not at that point in time, and not necessarily with this specific partner. And so she was at this point where she had always felt the energy of this child, but felt that it wasn't the right timing and was essentially looking for some sort of confirmation that was he going to be okay if she decided not to move forward in the experience in the pregnancy. And so that was a very unique experience, getting to work with this energy who had been conceived, and now there was this kind of new dynamic to work out between him and this mother of, okay, what if right now is not the right time for her? And is he going to be okay with that? And it turned out that he completely 1000% was filled with so much love and just, you do whatever you need to do at this moment in time and I'll be back. And 3 years later, she reconnected with her partner and he is back. He's almost 3 now. So he's here with her at the time that worked for him. So that's just one of the examples. But a lot of
Oh, that's interesting. Sorry, I just want to just kind of figure this out. So it's not like there's a soul per pregnancy. There's a soul, and then
correct.
It may come through in this pregnancy or it may come through in that pregnancy.
Exactly.
So if you lose a pregnancy, you don't lose a soul?
Correct. Exactly.
Huh.
Yeah, exactly. Which was kind of when I came upon that understanding, and then when I started to share that understanding, it was really quite healing for a lot of people, where they went, wow, I always felt so connected to that pregnancy, and I wondered why it ended, or why it didn't work out, or why the timing wasn't right, and so on. And then they find out actually that same energy who was present at that point in time actually planned on or was or did come back in a future experience. Yeah.
So I have a mailbox right next to me, and mail just shoots through.
That's okay.
It's a great sound effect. I have so many questions, but in spiritual community, there's this way of seeing things often, usually, whereby we look at everything, as being part of the highest good, that it's all for the best.
Yeah.
And that feels very much like the vibration that you carry. It's lovely and clear and tremendously positive. Is it all for the best?
It's a good question. I think it's certainly something that I had to and still have to kind of wrestle with, especially because we're dealing with things and experiences by people sometimes that are so horrific and so traumatic and so heartbreaking, and just one of those. I actually just had one that I heard about not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, where it's just one where you just hang your head. That's what I did. I just hung my head, like, why, and I think that we have to, we are human beings in these beautiful bodies on this planet that is often full of really challenging, difficult, heartbreaking, and confusing experiences that are, that's, I think, so, that's not unique to any specific person. All of us at some point during our human experience have had that moment of, why would that ever happen to me? Or why would that ever happen to somebody else? These things that we see happen, like the person who just retired and then they pass away of a heart attack 2 days after their retirement, or the person who, the father who just got, home from serving in the army and then passes away the second that he comes home and is reunited with his children. These things that just, the human brain just can't make sense of. It's so tragic, it's so horrible, it's so I think that my perspective is that we cannot bypass that. I can't bypass that perspective and that reality, the reality that the human experience is so very heartbreaking and confusing sometimes.
Yeah.
And then I think that we have to take time with that. And then sometimes I say to people, come to me and they've just had a horrible experience, a stillbirth, or a child who, passed away during labor, or, all these different experiences. And they come to me and say, I'm desperate for, understanding. I'm desperate for communication.
Mm-hmm.
Of course. Why wouldn't you be? And, I think sometimes what I say to those people is, it's okay to take a little bit of time, and I'll be here when you're ready for that. I think it's very important for us to not bypass the very human, the very real, the very traumatic and tragic experiences that we sometimes go through. And then we can possibly try and understand it through a spiritual lens. But not everybody is ready for that, and that's okay. I
Mm.
don't think that everybody
Mhm.
has to be ready for that. Some experiences need more time. They need 20 years, they need 25 years, they need 30 years in order to be able to really see them from a new perspective. And so I think that it's a great question. And my answer is somewhere kind of in between. Is it for the
Mm.
highest? Maybe, maybe not. You know, I think
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
I'm somewhere in the middle.
Maybe we don't need to decide.
Yeah,
I certainly find my back goes up around too much sort of Pollyannish
yeah,
spirituality, and
me too.
yet at the same time, I do think sort of having a map of the vibrations from the lowest to the highest is good for navigation on a daily basis. And like you say, grief, the more dense experiences are there to be felt. And there is a continuum from obviously from dark to light. And I mean, that's one way of mapping it, right? Um, and if we can't feel those very, very low points, we're unlikely also to be able to feel the highs. There's a beautiful book actually on grieving called it's called On Grief and Praise. I don't know if you've
Yeah,
ever
I've heard of
run
it.
run into it. Yeah, which is really saying that this is all a continuum. I think about it like, the keys of the piano, right? That these are all experiences that exist and are there to be felt. Um, and there's always this capacity, yeah, to move a little bit in one direction or another
Absolutely.
direction. And that's what I love about these kind of fields of, well, sex, psychic, psychedelics. It's all about kind of transformation, the ability to transform and to be really creative with what we've got. I want to talk more about death in general and this kind of these intersection, this sort of intersectional space between the worlds that we know. Um, but there's this one very specific question that has kept coming up for me as I've thought about speaking with you. And I feel like it's maybe where our work might intersect as well. I speak to a lot of women in their 30s and 40s who are genuinely confused about having a baby. Part of them has that drive, and then there's some combination of ingredients around the edge of like how they would like to do it, and those markers are not lining up, and they're wondering, does that mean existentially that they're not supposed to do this?
Right.
And I personally, as a therapist, find it very hard to, you were talking about hanging your head. I feel just a crunch inside myself. I experienced that myself. I mean, I had my own sort of issues around fertility, or anticipated issues around fertility. And I just think it's a really big deal, and it's a really tough one to sort out as a woman. And I'm wondering, is that the kind of thing you can help with?
Absolutely. You're right. There is absolutely intersection between your work and mine, and that I that's probably one of the more popular reasons why people would seek out me or this work or just ask questions is,
Mm.
I am in partnership, but I don't know if I want to have a child, or I'm not in partnership and I don't know if I want to have a child. And there's this undercurrent, I think, for a lot of people, a lot of women of, I feel that time is running out and I have to make a decision. And there is this kind of sense of pressure and urgency and,
Right, and even the expense of fertility
oh,
treatments,
completely.
freezing eggs is no joke, right?
Right, exactly. Saving for that, or setting aside resources in order to be able to invest in that. Absolutely, there's a lot of, and it is. I completely am able to like see and feel the sheer amount of pressure that there is around these topics and these conversations. And so, what I say to one of the things, and I talk about this in the book that I wrote all around these topics, is I have a whole kind of section around the decision to not have children, the decision to have children, if you feel incredibly uncertain about the decision to have children, and all of the other factors that contribute to that. If you're not in a partnership and you desire a partnership, and all of these different things, there's so many different kind of offshoots of this conversation. And one of the things that I say fundamentally, and this sounds very simple, but I have seen it work, with the people that I support through this decision is I think that the energy, the kind of the uncertainty around the decision, if there's uncertainty or if there's variables missing, let's say it like that. Like if there are fundamentally, there's a variable missing or there's a question mark over top of a variable that is hugely pivotal into to the decision, like a partner, or you're right, like financial resources or whatever the case may be. If there's a question mark, I have people just sort of choose an affirmation that feels right to them. You know, one of the ones that I like is I'm at peace with the current climate of uncertainty surrounding my decision to have a baby. I'm at peace with it. Or I'm awaiting the answers or the clarity to come surrounding my decision to have a baby, because I think there is often, again, like we talked about, there's that pressure where it's kind of like I have to make a decision right now, or I have to invest money into freezing my eggs right now, or I have to find a partner right now. And I think if we can kind of find this peace in the system and this peace in the body of kind of like, yeah, I'm a little bit unsure one way or another, but can I find that the peace of that within myself in the meantime, as I await the clarity, or as I await these variables to kind of sort themselves out, or as I go down the path of finding out more information around how this works or what I need or this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And
so I see that you're you're working on quieting their anxiety so they can tune in more to their own intuition and maybe the channel with the soul that wants to come in.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you're looking at the situation, seeing the soul that wants to come in, kind of knowing the answer, but just sort of holding off on it, or is it not like that?
That's a great question. And sometimes I think that there have been those experiences where it is actually important for that person to not be in turmoil, but have temporary kind of soul searching, I guess we could call it, or sort of having a moment of revelation or realization around something within themselves as it relates to motherhood, as it relates to bringing in a child, as it relates to partnership, as it relates to whatever. It is important for them to kind of realize that within themselves before they start to open up to a connection with, a potential soul of a child. And so there are times where I can see that. I'm like, this person is really, they're right on the precipice. They're right on the brink of having this sort of realization, revelation of, wow, this is why, or this is my hesitation, or this is what's causing me pause, or this is what scares me, or this sort of thing. And I can also see, there is this little baby waiting who's excited, who would be excited to come in if that's what she decides to do. And I think ultimately, we have free will, right? And so there's people who said, I always felt a child around me, but it just never happened. The circumstances, it just never happened. The timing didn't work out. The partner never did, whatever the case may be. And the people will say, I still feel connected to the energy of this child, even though I'm past the point of being able to kind of follow that pathway, So I think that we ultimately have free will. And then also the interesting thing is that the energies coming in have free will too. So there is this interesting kind of intersection and correlation of how our free will intersects with their free will. And it's a very sometimes complex arena or complex kind of tapestry of how all of the energy of our partner, our future partner, ourselves, the energy of a child is all working together.
Gosh, it's so complicated, and I see that's validated through your eyes as well.
It is.
The thought that comes up to me, and this may be telling about my personality structure, is guilt. I mean, if I spoke with you and you saw a baby in my field now and I said no to it because I'm so busy and tired, I feel guilty.
Sure. Yeah.
So
that's very real.
What's the solution?
That's very real. Yeah. And many people do, right? And that's the thing is, I get a lot of people who come to me and they're like, can you just, they want me to tell them, do you see a baby around me? Because I feel it, but they want me to tell them. And then, I think it is something that it has to be presented in a way that, if there is, it has to be presented in a way that they're going to be like, it's okay if you decide that this is not the lifetime or this is not the incarnation for you to bring in this child, and I think that that's one thing that I always consider too, is that in this is kind of very macro, but in this this in these bodies, this how we are blessed or lucky enough to have, say, 70, 80, 90 years during in a body on this planet. That's a blink in the kind of tapestry of the soul's journey and the soul's experience. And
Yes.
so it's if it doesn't happen in this incarnation, the soul goes, it's okay, we'll try again the next one. And I think for us that feels so far away and so long, and to them it's snap of a finger. And so they always know that there's kind of an opportunity for them. If it's not this time around, if they don't get to have the experience with you physically this time around, then they're looking forward to perhaps being able to have an experience with you the next time around physically. And I think that there is comfort knowing that those energies will continue to, even if they know that they're not going to be able to have a chance to be physical with you and have a physical experience with you, then they'll continue to have a spiritual experience with you. Just as our loved ones, and this is where there's really this correlation, just as our loved ones, as they leave their physical bodies, they continue to have a relationship with us in their non-physical form to us still in our physical form. And so there is this continuum and this continued relationship that I think people are sometimes nervous that it'll go away if they decide not to pursue the path of having children. So
what I'm hearing is, well, two things, thoughts. One is, surrender. It seems like there's a promotion of surrender in all of this, which is, there's more to heaven and earth than our philosophy. It's a much bigger world if we're looking from the level of soul.
Yes.
Well, the other thing that I guess the bigger question that comes up really is what is a soul?
Yeah.
And how does this bigger picture work? How do you conceive of it? I mean, I'm not expecting you to know in some kind of absolute or finite way. I mean, that might be a stretch, but we are talking about that. We're talking about these souls, and they go on and they come in and out of lifetimes, and they have some kind of intrinsic nature to them. I mean, what is a soul?
That's a great question, because it calls into question, I think this is sometimes what, this is something I think about often is at first, before I understood anything about the soul, I thought it was just the personality, the personality and how we express through these physical vessels and how we think and how we think of ourselves and how we think of the world. And really, this is just the personality is just a very small expression of the totality and the entire kind of scope of the soul, which is just so interesting. And so I think, in my experience, and other people might describe it differently or have a different way of relating to it, but in my experience, the soul is this kind of fragment of a larger source field. I almost kind of think of it like this great gelatinous sort of structure that started to break off into all of these other little kind of tiny fragmented pieces. And then these tiny fragmented pieces represent individual soul energy. And the individual soul energy is interested in having experiences and having physical or non-physical experiences. And the best way that the soul can have an experience is through a physical incarnation in a body, whether that's a human body or what have you. And so the soul, I think, is its ultimate. And this, I believe, my experience is that this is true for all souls, is that the soul's looking to learn, grow, and have experiences. And even the experiences that are not always favorable or exciting or wonderful, from a physical experience. The soul is like, I heard somebody say this the other day, the soul is like thirsty for experience. It's thirsty for experience. It's hungry for it, and it wants to get it in whatever way that it can. And so I believe that that we are an amalgamation, the soul is an amalgamation of all of the different experiences that we've had, both physically and non-physically. And that through each experience that we've had, through different incarnations, experiences, interactions, that we kind of take a little piece of this. So I'll take, let's say, hypothetically, I'll take 0.001% of my incarnation as Emily into the kind of the greater the greater sort of data bank, let's call it, of the soul, and I'll kind of save that, and then I'll take that forward with me on my future journey as a soul. Take that into wherever I decide to go next. So that's sort of how I would describe the soul and the soul's journey and the soul kind of energy. Most people, also just as an aside, a lot of people, including myself, when we see soul energy, it can take on a lot of different forms. It can take on the form of just, a glowing ball of light. It can vary in different colors: blue, pink, green, yellow, orange, red. Some people will see the soul kind of as actually the outline of a physical form without any kind of defined parts, just sort of an outline of a physical form. So that's the other thing. My point being is that the soul is so abstract and can take on so many different forms depending on how it decides to. And just because a soul isn't in a body, if a soul's out of a body, it's still continuing to learn, grow, and have experiences in different forms.
So two things on this. Well, one is, what's the end goal of a soul? I mean, you said it's thirsty to grow.
Yeah, that's a question. Is like, does it ever? Because here's the thing: is that some people will say that there does reach a point where the soul has had all of the experiences that it has wished to have, and it's learned all of the different things that it wished to learn, and it kind of, there's a completion. There's a graduation, so to speak. Some people,
just on a personal note here, I've had this sense that this is my last go round as a human.
Yeah, beautiful. Congratulations.
Yeah, I'm done. Peace out. Yeah. It's really interesting. I mean, that's who knows, these fanciful things. I don't know. Yeah. Is this whole thing about new souls, old souls real? What do you think?
Good question. I tend to I wrote about this actually in the book. I think that there's sort of a sensationalism around the new soul, old soul thing.
Yeah.
And I think that it's filtered through sort of our understanding, and this is what I personally don't like, which is some sort of hierarchical system that if you are an old soul, you've had a lot of lives, and therefore you're superior to somebody,
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I push up against. But I think that
there's something so beautiful about the idea of a new soul, isn't there?
Correct. Absolutely.
So fresh.
Fresh. Such fresh perspectives, such joy. I'm getting goosebumps.
And I don't think I don't know how. Well, let me ask you, how do you identify it? If you had to say you were an old or new soul,
I would say I fall somewhere in the middle. That's what I feel.
Yeah,
I feel I'm somewhere.
Because
in the
I
middle.
was just thinking, you do feel like an interesting combination of, obviously it feels like you've got, you're just like a pure channel to wisdom, but you're also just so fresh,
Yeah.
You feel like
curious.
a baby,
I'm like
a wise baby. Yeah.
Totally. I'm like here to really soak up as much of the experience and learn and be curious as much as of the experience as I can. And I don't feel, it's funny because I have a lot of friends and people in the spiritual community who echo the same sentiment as you, as I think this is my last round. I'm ready to go. And when I hear people say that, I understand, because I can recognize I recognize the challenge of the physical incarnation, and I also don't feel the same. I feel excited for whatever my next experience is. I feel like,
Well, it also that probably dovetails with the fact that you are, these newbies are speaking to you. You're part of the avant-garde, you're part of the next stage, which is really interesting. I mean, how do you see your role in terms of the babies?
Great question. Yeah, I think that one of the things that I'm very passionate about, and that I've received kind of information on, I guess, or received in meditation and so on, is that definitely a big part is to help them arrive here and to facilitate that communication beforehand with the parents. It's really just kind of getting it started. It's like two people who don't quite speak the same language yet, or they do, but they're having a little bit of a hard time understanding each other, and having kind of somebody come in and be like, hey, you're both saying the exact same thing, and let's get you kind of linked up and speaking exactly the same language. And then as soon as that's done, my job is done and I'm stepping out. So I think that there's a big part of it that I feel very excited about, that aspect. But another aspect is I was really the child who was, like I said, incredibly sensitive and felt very, very alone in much of my childhood. It was just sort of like, it's me, myself, and I've got to figure out how to kind of deal with these feelings and these things.
Were you an only child or not?
No, I'm not. I have a younger brother.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But our experiences were so different.
Yeah.
He was just like so happy to be here, and just like he was just
Mm.
so excited about everything. And I was just like more kind of like, well, don't you see the suffering of that person across the street? And he was like, what are you talking
Yeah.
about?
Yeah.
Um, so I think that another part that I'm very passionate about as well, and part of what I feel my role is, at least at this current point in time, is to then sort of support those same children as they're growing older and they're entering the education system, and as they are learning to make new friends, and they're learning about, oh, I can feel a lot of emotion, or I can feel a lot of energy in my body, or I know
Mm.
things about
Hmm.
this person or that person, or just very sensitive,
Mm.
empathic, intuitive children. I'm really excited about supporting them as they.
Yeah. I mean, I think the EQ is getting higher.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree.
but there is not the education to support it. I mean, it seems to me that education, I mean, don't get me started, but in America is yeah, I mean, a lot of it feels like not that helpful given the way that the world is changing.
Yeah.
And it feels to me, and of course, I'm super biased because this is my world of work, but I do feel like EQ is increasingly important, and particularly in terms of parenting. And I love what you're doing because I think, in a way, what you're doing is forging sort of the EQ and the innate bond between the parent and the child, and that ultimately, particularly in today's world that is changing so fast, it feels like the bond, the recognition, the eye to eye gaze, the connection between parent and child is paramount,
Mm,
because there's nothing else really to hold on to because it's changing so fast.
absolutely. And it's really, I don't know about you, Jane, but I feel it's so beautiful and amazing what I'm seeing now, and just the way that exactly that relationship and that bond has changed, and the
Mm.
um, just all the new ways that parents are kind of operating themselves
Mm.
and their families, and the perspectives that they're changing, or the ways that they're changing their own behaviors, or
Yeah,
so many different things. It's quite.
there is an increase in consciousness for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it comes with a downside. Sometimes it feels like there's so much sort of anxiety and preciousness about getting it right,
Yes.
and that feels really exhausting. But yeah, if you had some advice to give to parents, new parents, prospective parents, about this whole process, what would it be?
Oh, goodness. And I'm humble in this. I'm not a parent, and so
Mhm.
I have not gone through that experience yet. I hope to soon, someday. That
Yeah.
is what happens for me. I would love for it to be. But I'm aware of the fact that I haven't gone through this experience yet, and so I'm also just aware of,
Yeah.
sometimes people don't want to hear from people who don't have children, because it is a different experience.
Sure.
It's completely
I want to hear, but
okay.
I completely understand that caveat.
Yes.
Very important. Yes. Yes.
Well, I feel that um, one of the things, and this can start preconception, this can start during pregnancy, is that bond, because I feel that when there is this intrinsic and very intuitive and oftentimes unspoken understanding between mother and child, and father and child, or caretaker and child, that makes the journey through the life's experience, the journey through the child's upbringing, feel just, there's a different quality. Not to say it's always easier. Sometimes that awareness of their or that kind of intimacy of bond can sometimes make it feel not challenging, but it can be more work, like you say, or there's more kind of,
Yeah.
am I doing it right, or can I do it better, or am I doing enough, which is something I hear a lot as well. But I think that
Mm.
it's one of the things that I recommend is, if you're able to start building that bond, that relationship, preconception through pregnancy, leading up to the birth experience, that changes the quality of the experience in the postpartum window, in the early childhood, in the early education years, and so on. There's just an innate and intimate understanding of the child and their needs, and their desires for being here, even, their interest in, why are they even here in the first place, why are they in a body, why did they choose a body, why did they choose this body at this time in this geographical location. I think understanding the child's will and their desire to be here is
Mm.
very important, and very valuable nugget of information as we support them through their journey. And a lot of times I find too, this is actually one other thing I would say, is that a lot of these children I'm finding, especially now, let's say in the last 5 years or so, is if so, because I can hear some people in your audience asking, how do I know? How do I know that? Is sometimes they'll tell you beforehand, sometimes they'll tell you in the preconception phase. Sometimes they might not tell you until they get here. I have a good friend of mine who has a 3-year-old daughter who is now able to really articulate herself and communicate, and she just has so many things to say about what she wants to do here. She's telling her mom every day, well, I want to do this, and I need to make sure I need to do this, and I need to help the kids at school, and I need to do this and this, and I want to be a compassionate teacher, and all these things. She's telling her, this is why I'm here. I'm ready to tell you. And so I think that is so simple. It's such a simple thing, but I think the one of the most beautiful things we can do for these children as well, and parents can do for their children, is to encourage them to speak about these kinds of things if they feel comfortable encouraging them to speak about it. Like, just a simple question of, why are you here? Why did you come? Why did you come into our family? Or a very beautiful question is, how did you choose our family? Because that's a wonderful, that opens up a whole kind of territory that's very beautiful that I've seen. So I think
you've got to slip that question in before they're teenagers. I didn't choose you.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
You made me.
And then you can remind them, listen, you told me this when you were 3 years old.
Yes.
This is what you were interested in. This is what you wanted. So I think that those are two elements that I think are very beautiful. And I think the other thing is to, and this is what I'm seeing a lot, is to stay flexible. I think that as parents, we can sometimes have these not to speak but parents can often have these, I'm going to do this with my child. I really want to make sure I do this, or I want to do this with them, or I want to be this kind of parent. And then they arrive here and we realize that that's some of the things that we wanted to be, or that we wanted to do, are not actually what the child requires at all. It's really not what they're looking for. It can sometimes be really hard to reconcile. Well, this is what I thought I would do. This is the kind of parent I thought I would be, or how I thought I would want to raise my child. And then the child is asking something completely different from us. So I think and it comes back to what you brought up earlier, Jane, of surrender. I think that there is this element in parenting in this age right now of surrender, of kind of like, okay, I'm having to stay flexible, and that can be really challenging. That can be really difficult, and it may take time to sort of discover, okay, after this period of staying flexible, maybe changing something that I was doing, or a thought or perspective that I had, what next? It may take time for that to sort of materialize.
Yeah. I mean, I think in this day and age, we parents are sort of soulful dinosaurs. We can't possibly kind of arrive at where they are, at where our children are, and where their children will be. We can provide, love and connection, and I think we can keep our wisdom about us. But in terms of, I mean, what you're saying about parenting, and how we have an idea, an attachment to how we're going to parent, how our kids are going to be. I feel like that is an ongoing kind of death process, because a lot of it's unconscious. We have a lot of unconscious assumptions about, how education should be, whether children should be, doing a lot of extracurricular activities or not, what kind of food they should be eating, how much sleep they should be getting, what role should social life play for them, where should drugs be, where should alcohol be, I mean, you can go on and on and on and on. I mean, it's nothing but sort of opinions and fears and attachments to ways that were good or not good in your own childhood. And I just feel like it's kind of death in terms of that, because, well, it doesn't really work. The children have completely their own sort of MO. They're stronger and generally more conscious than us. I mean, it's amazing to me when I get kind of feedback from my kids on some sort of psychological or spiritual level. It's just more advanced. And, I'm very proud, because I feel like, okay, well, at least I created a step for them to step on. That's what I see parenting as, is we spend a lot of time creating this one. I see it as like a one little wooden step, and then they just step on that step and then carry on walking up the stairs. You're like, wait, can we pay a bit more attention to this one step? But it's so beautiful, because it's like you said, it's so much work for something so small. It's such a sort of, it's like the love of the craft of actually being underneath, actually being a support system. Very amazing process. I'm wondering if and maybe this is fanciful, but is there a sort of trend in these incoming souls? Is there a reason that they're coming in now, not another time? And how does this relate to where the planet's going? Just a small question,
absolutely.
Emily.
It's a small, big question. I love it.
Yeah.
There definitely are trends, and I think that something that has been so exciting for me. I'm somebody who likes to track and observe patterns and observe the way that energy is moving throughout time, and I've always been very interested in history because of that, and how these different figures. One of the things I'm really interested in, just to kind of piggyback on that point, is looking at these great creators and artists and inventors that have been interspersed throughout throughout history, who bring in these really pivotal ideas and concepts that have changed the course of humanity. Nikola Tesla or Albert Einstein, or all these different people who bring in these concepts, these ideas that they changed the trajectory, and they changed the collective understanding, and people who discovered planets, and when Neptune was discovered, and Pluto, and all these things, and it changes the way that we operate. And I feel that we are in a time of that same discovery, where there's a change, there's a trajectory change. And I think some of it is coming externally. There's always things that we're discovering as human beings on planet Earth, and new things we're seeing, and things we're seeing in new ways. But I think that a big part of this change is coming in kind of almost anchored in the energies of these children, that they are bringing the change. They're kind of like, we've got it with us, and we're going to bring it in and kind of make it happen once we get here. It's kind of a very, as opposed to it being, let's say, one person like Nikola Tesla or Albert Einstein, those two examples that I gave, it's a collective of people. It's thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of souls who are coming.
Hundreds of thousands of change makers.
Exactly. Yes.
Ooh, I like it.
Yeah.
I hope I get to live long enough to see this happen. Yeah. What are they going to change, Emily? What do they want to do?
I can only theorize.
What do they want to change? Everything. But how are they going to do it, and what is going to change?
Exactly, precisely. And I think there's a part of me that's really kind of open to the mystery of it all. I'm like, what? Yeah. How is it going to play out? And I like to keep some parts of it kind of. I don't necessarily want to know everything in these communications. I'm sort of like, let me be surprised. I want to be surprised just alongside everyone else. But I think that certainly they're here to kind of tackle a lot of the systems that are already sort of on their way out and are just not been working for thousands of years. They're here to kind of give them their last boot out the door
to midwife the death process.
Correct. Exactly.
Said it. Yes.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big.
Well, I think we're doing that too, don't
absolutely.
you? You and I are doing that in our own ways.
Definitely. Yeah. And how beautiful that these kind of allies in these kind of soul allies are coming in to sort of join hands with us. That's really what I feel. I was just talking about this today. They're coming to join hands with us, their parents, and kind of go, let's do it together. We're doing this. This part is all of us together, and you're going to help me, and I'm going to help you, and we're going to do it kind of all together. So I think one of the things that I talked about in the book that I wrote around this is that there's kind of these different. I've sort of started to loosely group them into these different categories, and some of the categories are the integrators and the preparers and the activators, and we have a high kind of number, a high frequency of these sort of activator energies, where just as they're kind of here to activate or initiate like we just said, midwife the death process of some of these things that are ready to die, and they're also here to kind of kickstart the birth of the new kind of paradigm or new reality or new system or whatever you want to call it. And again, I don't necessarily know what that's going to look like, and I'm excited to see how it plays out. I have inklings of little ideas what it might look like, but I'm like I said, I'm excited to be surprised as well.
Do you feel hopeful about the planet?
I do, and I will preface it by saying I'm an optimist, eternal optimist.
Yeah,
I'm filled with optimism about the human spirit.
Beautiful, bring it. We need it.
Yeah. We're so resilient. We really are, and the planet wants to live and thrive. I believe that planet Earth is, as a living being, it wants to continue to thrive and to house life, and to have this planet continue to be alive and well and thriving. And so I feel optimistic about where we're headed. Now, some days it's like, oh, okay, this is a tough day on the planet.
Some days fighting the
Yeah.
smoke and the hurricanes and the earthquakes, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
Somebody's angry out there.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah. I'm glad to hear that, Emily. Thank you. It's really beautiful to have your fresh and encouraging energy. You know, it's a beautiful fountain of fresh resource. Really lovely. Okay, switching tacks, or maybe not really, but I guess I just want to ask you flat out, how do you see death?
I see death as similar to I personally feel that death is not dissimilar from other rites of passage that we experience throughout
Other rites of passage.
other rites of
did you say?
passage
Yeah.
that we experience
Mhm.
throughout the human life. Death is just and I don't even want to call it the final rite of passage, because there really is not, like, I believe that there isn't a sense of of, of finality in death. I believe that death is actually just another beginning. It's a death to one chapter of a book, and then the second that we die, the soul begins a whole new experience. And so I think it's maybe I romanticize it a little bit in the way that I look at it. And again, there's elements of different death experiences, whether that's physical death or otherwise, that are incredibly heartbreaking and painful. But I feel that it's one of the many rites of passage that the human being goes through throughout the trajectory of the lifetime.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that we get to hang with our loved ones after we die?
I do.
Do we get to eat ice cream together?
Yes. We can do it.
Can I be with all my best friends?
Yes. Ice cream.
Can I sleep on really nice mattresses?
Absolutely.
After I die?
Drink wine.
Yeah. Well, that's the great thing. You just really don't need to worry about mattresses after you die, right? You just
It's
comfy
float,
on
you
the
rest.
body level all the time.
Yeah, I believe we have a reconnection period directly after physical death, where we get to reunite with the different beings who have gone before us, and get to kind of reconnect with them. And then I believe there's a reflection period where we reflect back on our most recent experience, and what was it like, and how did we feel about where we were, and what we contributed, and what we received, and the kind of people that we impacted. And I believe there's a reflection. I also believe there's, for a lot of energies, there's a kind of a restoration period where we go into kind of a cocoon and we will restore. We'll spend time in rest periods, in the rest mode, which actually, just anecdotally, when I used to do mediumship, I could always tell when I was working with a soul who was in the rest period, because they were just kind of sleepy, and like they didn't really have much to say, and they were kind of
you mean not the person you were talking with, but one of their ancestors? Yeah.
Exactly. They were kind of
it does seem to be different time frames around this. Like, my grandmother came to me like 20 years after she passed, like in a really vivid way, and that's so strange. I thought she was just kind of gone. But one thing I have noticed in most cases of death around me is that there's been and maybe this corresponds to what you were saying about the connection, but there's been this kind of blooming of the sense of that person after they pass, almost like they get bigger, they expand.
Absolutely.
So is that the soul expanding as the sort of life goes back to it after the incarnation?
Completely. And I also believe that when we come into this is another just kind of funny concept, but I also believe that when we come into the body, the soul comes into the body again, like I said, this sort of, we could say, like this orb of light, that we're not taking the full percentage of our energy, let's say, into the body. Maybe we're only taking 10-15%. And so when the soul leaves the physical body, we're merging back with that kind of great, some people call it the oversoul, the greatest sort of the all of who we are in totality. And so there is this expansiveness where we kind of transcend the sometimes limited POV of being here and being in this sort of body, and we expand back into the greatest kind of all of who we are, the oversoul, the higher self, some people call it.
Yeah. And there's this other interesting phenomenon, which is that it seems like some spiritual teachers, when they pass, continue to get bigger and bigger. Like my experience of Ram Dass, who I think, my sense of him is very kind of like, I don't know the right word, but magnificent or heavyweight kind of spiritual dude presence.
Absolutely.
And it felt like after he died, he just carried on getting bigger and bigger as a teacher. Kind of amazing, right? So what, is that to do with how would you conceive of that?
It's beautiful. And I experienced similar after Ram Dass's passing. I got goosebumps as you were talking about it, because I remember it and still experience the energy field of him. And I think with people like that, what's so interesting to me is that it's almost as if, I personally, this is just my experience, and of course I also never met Ram Dass physically, so it's a bit different, but I felt that he continued, like you said, he continued to get bigger, but it also felt like he continued to teach in a way, in a non-physical way, right?
Exactly.
He was still available, really. He really
there's a sort of generosity blooming.
Exactly. And I think that that could be a multi-incarnational thing, meaning that this is just a soul who came into the body that he did to really kind of do a lot and spread a lot of spiritual wisdom and spiritual teachings on the planet at the time that he did. And then when he was finished with that mission, he merged back into his kind of great infinity, the great infinity of the soul. That's kind of what I believe, is that this was a very kind of high teacher who came into a body and kind of found his way back to his high teacherness in his human form. And I think that there are many people like that on the planet. One of my teachers who passed away in 2021, very similar experience with her of, she passed and it was just the energy got bigger and she kept teaching. It really doesn't feel like she's not here anymore. There's still a great amount of access that I feel to her energy.
No, I could completely relate to that. I had that also with a mentor of mine, and it was only really, it was in her passing and in the time after her passing, that the blooming really kicked in, and my awareness, I mean, she was with me for a while in a way that was just felt so nuts.
Right.
Giving me very specific, teachings and advice. And over time I realized, and it's quietened down a bit now, but she's just been a really big teacher for me in a way that I couldn't have imagined really while she was alive.
I completely relate.
Thought she was an interesting eccentric who I knew, and we had this unusual relationship, and then I was like, oh, she's powerful. I didn't realize.
You see more when the soul leaves the body, and you kind of recognize, wow, I have very similar experience that I experienced with this teacher I'm talking about too. So very similar.
Beautiful. I mean, one sort of line has been coming to me, as we speak, which is, don't take life and death too seriously.
Absolutely. That's it. And sometimes it's easier to kind of, I find it's easier to merge with that belief sometimes more often than others, where it's like, don't take it so seriously. It's all
exactly. When you're really in pain, you're like, fuck you. I don't want to
say that to me.
Be told to be all light.
Exactly. But at moments like this,
moments like this,
it sums it up so perfectly.
Accessible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I think that's a very good point. Emily, I'd love to wrap up our amazing time together with two questions. One is, what is your highest hope for your own work? And what is your hope for the bigger picture?
Beautiful questions. I think my highest hope for my own work is that I am able to continue to stay curious and flexible enough to not calcify around it, to stay open to the continued developments of what is needed and what is necessary and what's important for parents, for children, for incoming souls. I think it's so easy in these times to sort of say, this is it, and this is the truth, and this is the way, and this is how it is, and this is how it will be. And I'm just interested in staying as open, curious, and flexible, and sort of decalcified around it all as possible, so that I can continue to listen to the whispers of what's to come next, what's wants to be created through me, what wants to be written, wants to be shared, wants to be communicated, wants to be taught. I'm excited for whatever that looks like, and I really find myself in that phase right now. I just published a book this year, and sort of like, okay, what is the next assignment? And I don't know yet, and that's okay. I'm excited to find out. So that's what I would say there. And then my highest hope for the collective, or just the planet, or people in general, is that we think of is that we continue to remember that there is even in the most seemingly chaotic, disorganized, and sort of what seems like the most random moments, or the most random happenings, that there is a intelligence that we're able to tap into and to receive from, to receive nourishment and information and clarity and clarification. And I think that's very important right now, in times that we're living in, that can seem so chaotic, disorganized, and random, and unintelligent in many ways. And some of them are, of course, but to tap into kind of the greater thread of cosmic intelligence that's available to us. I hope for individuals here, and also just the world at large. So that's what I would say.
Beautiful. Thank you. So yes, I join you. Long live the open creative beginner's mind, and access to higher cosmic intelligence. Yeehaw.
Absolutely.
I'm on board.
That's it. That's it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, Jane.
I'm going